Welcome to Deep Dive with Dr. D. The entire goal of this podcast is to help you see that you have it within you to do amazing things. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm going to continue the story of my life. If you've been following along, the last episode was titled Karma Catches Up With Me, as I think is what it was called. And just a brief summary is I had started an affair, a full-blown affair, with my best friend. Yeah, some friend I was, with my best friend's wife. It doesn't go well, as these things never do. Me and Cindy, my son's mother, my first wife, we split up. I move out, and the Laura, the girl I was having the affair with, her husband leaves, moves back to Tennessee. Me and her move in together thinking, oh, it's love. It was not. Karma catches up to me in a big way. I had a friend, another friend, Ron, who then Laura had an affair with him while she's with me. Yeah, this. So when I say karma catches up with me, it did. And so we split up, and I move. My sister lets me stay at her place. She lived in the same house in Tacoma. She's still there, in fact. That actual house in Tacoma off of 56th and Pacific, or 64th and McKinley, it's kind of in that area, has been in our family forever. Anyway, I'm single, move in with her because I didn't have a place to go. Cindy would not take me back. She was done. I could not weasel my way back into that relationship. And I still have my job at Loomis Armored. And that's where I'm at. I was hanging out with, I think I started hanging out with a childhood friend, because he worked at Loomis also. It's kind of how I got the job there. Him and I think we were both single. Yeah. So we were hanging out. I'm in my early, almost mid-20s by this point. If this is 91, 92, I'm 23, 24, 25, 20. So, almost mid-20s. Working, just kind of living my life. I'm driving a 79 Chevy Love pickup. I love that little truck. I had bought it from my brother-in-law. And living kind of the single life. This is pre-internet age, pre-cell phone age. I'm just working and still drinking. Drinking's very much still part of my life. Smoking pot. I'm smoking pot. Very much part of my life. I did those two things for the duration until I found a life in recovery, which will come several years later. When I'm 29 is when I really grab onto a life in recovery. So me and Julio used to we'd go cruising down on the waterfront in Tacoma, and to meet girls and hang out and do whatever mid-20s kids did. I remember going to sports bars. The Sonics, the Seattle still had the Sonics, and I remember this period of time as they were doing pretty good. And this will come up again, probably not this episode, but when I find a life in recovery and then I return to use, it was actually in about 94 when the Seattle Supersonics had made it to the playoffs. But we're not there yet. I remember, I'll never forget the day that I went to Shucks Auto Supply. I don't think they're even around anymore. No, they haven't been for a long time. It was on 38th Street by the Tacoma Mall to buy some air fresheners for my little Chevy Love pickup. And I go in and there's a girl behind the counter. She's working there. and we start a conversation. Sparks start kind of flying. I think I remember wanting her to help me pick out a good air freshener, right? As you do these things. And her name was Stephanie, and we meet, and I think we maybe exchange phone numbers. Again, this is pre-cell phone age, so it'd be a landline at home. God, I can almost remember my sister's phone number. Almost 475 something. Anyway, we must have made arrangements to meet down at the waterfront. Yes, that is a thing. Pre-cell phone age for those that are young. Pre-cell. If you wanted to make a call, you either used a phone booth or a landline from your home. Anyway, so we must have made arrangements to meet at the waterfront, because that's where I would go on weekends. We'd go down and you'd park and, you'd cruise and check out all the cars. And I remember her coming down. She had a Mustang, a 2-door coupe Mustang at the time. And, sparks flew. We fell for each other pretty quickly, as I remember. I was thinking about this with me and girls that, I'm kind of I grew up poor kid from the other side of the tracks. I dropped out of high school. So I was not your, typical, go to school, do well, do sports, graduate high school. That was not me. Low income. You guys have heard the story of my mom and how we were raised. Stephanie, just like Dawn, if you remember back, the girl that I was engaged to before I went in the military, she went to Curtis High School. She was a cheerleader. Her family, I wouldn't say they were rich, but they had money. I was able to attract girls. I never really had a big problem attracting girls. And Stephanie was another one. Her family, she came from a pretty wealthy family. The family still owns a pretty prestigious, fancy kind of furniture store in the Tacoma area. But she never really gleaned on to that part of her family. She wanted to do her own thing. She wanted to earn her own money. But her and I, we started dating. Tyler at this time, he's a toddler, like 1 or 2. Cindy and I, when that relationship with Laura ended, her and I, our relationship, co-parenting, improved dramatically. She obviously did not like Laura. She was, the other woman. And so when that ended, me and Cindy were able to start, co-parenting. I was seeing my son, and she liked Stephanie almost from right out of the gate. Obviously for one reason, she wasn't the other woman. But Stephanie and I hit it off almost immediately. So from my sister's, staying at her house was temporary for sure, because she was married and had 6 kids, and it was just a 3-bedroom house, I think. So I was sleeping on the couch. I would end up on my sister's couch a couple times during my life. And this was one of those. And me and Stephanie moved in together. I'm almost certain that's where I went from there. Her cousin had a rental house over by Tacoma Community College. It was a nice little house. And we moved in together. I still had my job at Loomis, so I was making good money. I was paying child support, of course, but it wasn't I paid $307 a month. This is 1990, 91. And then I think I want to say I was making $12 or $13 an hour, full time, some overtime, had full benefits and all that good stuff. And then Stephanie, I want to say she was in school, college, and she was working. She always worked. worked hard, very hardworking individual. And so we got a place, moved in together, got serious pretty quick. And her, I can visualize right now our places together. It was a very positive environment. We had a lot of love for each other. She was someone that really made me feel loved and special, and cared about me in a way that I hadn't felt in a long time. Cindy was one of those, but because of so much damage in our relationship, and obviously that was over. I had it some with Dawn, who I had a serious relationship, but that didn't last too long. So for me, Stephanie and I, I'm mid-20s. I want to say she's my same age. I think we were pretty close in age. It was nice. It was special. She believed in me. She wanted me. Yeah, she wanted me to, consider going to school. In fact, my very first exposure to a college campus was through her. She encouraged me to take a class on, oh gosh, what was that class? It was a business class, because I've always kind of had that entrepreneurial spirit. And I remember taking that very first class, and it was because of her encouragement. My family liked her. She was, my mom liked her. I know Cindy liked her. And she had friends, Tom and, oh God, I just lost her name. She passed not too awfully long ago. Tom and Lynn. Tom and I would become pretty close, good friends. He was an entrepreneur. He had his own business, and I really liked him a lot. So we would hang out with them. Her family, I ended up really having a pretty good relationship. She lived with her grandparents. They lived right by the Narrows Bridge in a really, really cool house. And her grandpa and I hit it off pretty well. I remember I detailed his car. He had a really cool Lincoln Continental 4-door, like in mint shape. I detailed that for him. I loved talking to him about the history of his business that he had started, and just life. And Stephanie's probably going to get on me about this, but I don't remember if I met her grandma or if she had already passed. Her uncle didn't really take to me. I just remember, God, I can't think of the guy's name. He was kind of uppity in my view. Her cousin was super cool. I remember him. So all in all, we started out really well, really strong. There was a lot of love, a lot of care. She was really good with Tyler. And so that's where we were. We would play darts together. This is old school, you guys. We played on a dart league together. I was drinking, smoking pot. I'm pretty sure she did too. We both smoked cigarettes. I was like wild that I smoked cigarettes. But living good. Things were good. For me, the change happened when trust got broken. I remember she was wanting to be an airline stewardess, so she got an interview, and she had to fly to, I think it was Dallas, to do this interview. And I don't even remember exactly how I found out, but she had said she was staying at a stewardess's crash pad. That's a very normal thing. And I think I called or something, and a guy answered the phone. Maybe that's what it was. I don't remember. But it turned out that wasn't completely accurate. She had actually stayed at a pilot's crash pad. And this is my recollection of what happened. And that for me was, it was tough. And that kind of broke my trust. I'm certain if she were to tell her side of the story, maybe it'd be different. And, but for me, that was when the trust was broken. That's when things changed. And maybe it was after that, I don't know. And this is going to sound really weird. Like, why would you start doing that? But I did. Somewhere in this, I started hanging out with Laura. Yeah, the woman I cheated on my ex-wife with, and Ron. I would go out to their house where I lived, and now he was living with her, and I would hang out. And on the weekends, we would do crank, old school crank, just speed. And we'd play dice all night, kind of the same things I was doing with her when I was with her, and Ron would come over. Well, now I was the guy friend that was coming out. I think Stephanie came once, and I remember she's like, this is weird. I don't like this. Like, this is someone you were with, and why are you wanting to hang out? And rightly so. It was, why would you do that? And I remember I was doing that. So the dysfunction started coming in that relationship. Somewhere in here we had moved into an apartment. I think her cousin sold the house, so we had to move, and it was a nice little 2-bedroom apartment at Spanish Hills. The apartment complex is still there as far as I know, literally right across the street from Tacoma Community College. And I have lots of positive memories from there, so I don't think the real dysfunction started until after we had moved there. I remember lots of experiences with my son there. He had a electric little car thing he would ride around the complex. I would play basketball in this basketball court. It was a nice place. It was a cool for, me, kid growing up with not much. It was a pretty nice place, and we lived there together. And that's also where we started having problems. So the drinking and smoking pot was there throughout. This is where my life with drugs and alcohol takes a pretty significant shift. I had a neighbor, literally lived right next door to me. We used to talk, and we were friendly with each other, and we'd talk to each other across our balconies and all this. And we would smoke pot together, maybe have a beer together. Nothing really crazy, right? Let me set this up. This is 92, 93, 92, 93, somewhere in there. This is when the crack epidemic was in full bore. Like, it's all you saw on the news. In Tacoma, Hilltop was like just crack haven. It was everywhere. Cops was the show. I think Cops was pretty new, and that's what you saw all the time, was just crack, crack, crack. Now, me, kid, all-American boy, so to speak, I always said, I'll drink my beer, I'll smoke my pot, but I'll never do that. Talking about, crack. And crank, I was doing old school kind of speed. It was like, but that didn't, cause me to miss work, or it didn't cause me to, commit crimes or do all this. So it was acceptable. But really it was, alcohol and pot. And this was when you could literally go to prison for smoking pot. You had to go buy it from a dealer. Alas, I was the guy that was like, I'll never do that, though. Never do crack. And the neighbor friend, I went over to his house, his apartment next door, and I'll just never forget. He's holding this pipe, and it doesn't look like a pot pipe. I'm like, oh, what's that? And he says, oh, it's crack. And I was just like, I didn't know. I had no idea he smoked crack, because he seemed really functional, and he had a job, and he worked, and, he had a family, and it threw me off. And I knew this guy, and I'm like, oh, wow. And he offered me some. What did I say? Did I say, no, not me, I'll never do that? Nope. In that space and time, I said, sure, I'll try it. And I did. And I remember the first time I tried it, it didn't really do anything for me. I went home, went to sleep, went up, went to work, blah, blah, blah. I don't know how much time span was between that first time and the next time I tried it. Maybe a day, maybe a week, I'm not sure. But the next time I tried it, it took hold. And I can laugh now. If you remember the song by Huey Lewis and the News, I want a new drug, I want one that doesn't screw my life up. This was truly what I thought. I thought I had found the drug, the best drug in the world. You might think this is crazy, but when I first started smoking crack, it was like, oh my God. The euphoria you get from smoking, you're smoking cocaine. That's what it is. That really intense high. You feel so good. I had never really felt those powerful of good feelings in my life to that point. I really thought I had found the drug that was like, oh, this is better than pot. It's better than alcohol. I don't have a hangover. I don't get tired. And for a period of time, not too long a period of time, I was able to I was going to work. I would come home. I'm pretty sure it was just on the weekends at first, but then it really started taking hold, because what happens is as you continue to smoke it, you need more to achieve the same high. You never really get that initial high, but you're always chasing that first high. So it went from, just on weekends to, okay, some weekdays, okay, every weekday, every day. And then it started affecting my job. I was with alcohol and pot. Trust me, I had many hangovers and I smoked a lot of pot, but I was functional. I always showed up to work. I always worked hard. Well, then with crack cocaine, I was staying up all night during the week and still high. And so then I would start calling in sick, once a week, twice a week. And then it was becoming more frequent. My productivity at work was going in the toilet. Mind you, I'm working at an armored car company carrying literally millions of dollars around on a daily basis. And I remember, so let me go with the progression. So with crack cocaine, it takes more and more and more, and it's not cheap, right? Like literally, what starts out at maybe a $20 or $40 a day habit really snowballs. And I'm spending more and more and more of my money keeping this all a secret. Stephanie, and I believe her, she had no idea. When I told her, she was like kind of curious what was going on, but she was truly surprised. And other people in my world, when I told them, when I finally was like, I need help, they were like, what is going on? No way, not you, blah, 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 all of that. So the money was just like, and I remember this one time I went into work and I'm in the thick of it and I'm broke and I know I need to just get through the day. And I had the thought of stealing money from work, from an armored truck. But the only thing that kept me from doing it is that's a federal charge. That could have ended me up in like big trouble. So fortunately for me, I had enough fear of the ramifications of that I never stole from Loomis Armored. Oof. But I sold everything else I owned. I pawned everything I could think of. And my drug dealer, I had actually bought a computer. This is again early 90s, and it was like I've always been kind of a techie guy, so I remember I traded my computer for drugs, to everything. I have a picture from that time period, one picture from that apartment from that time period that shows me laying on a futon, not a futon, wicker furniture, if you remember that from the 90s. And my son Tyler is asleep in a little papasan type chair. It shows that. And then I have a coffee table. That was nearly all I had left from what was a completely furnished apartment. And this all happened in a pretty short period of time, less than 6 months. I sold everything I owned. I was into it with my dealer. I owed him money. And I remember work. If you've been following along, my manager, Dan Rushing, good human. He, he kept me on even through all that chaos I caused with Chris and cheating on my wife with his wife and all the drama it caused at work. So then I'm missing work. I'm showing up late. My productivity is down. I remember he would call. This is back in the old school, right? Pre-cell phone, answering machines at home. He would call and you could hear the voicemail coming in on your answering machine. He'd like, Douglas, pick up the phone. And I would not, because I was either high or just out of it. There's no way I could go to work. Paranoid, all of the things that happen after you've used a lot of drugs and stayed up and you're not eating. Oh God, nightmare. And I remember he came to my apartment, like trying to hunt me down. Like he was worried. He was like, cause I wouldn't answer the phone. I wasn't showing up to work. And I remember he called me and he's like, hey, I need you to come in and talk to me, and I knew what was coming. And he had to let me go. Here's, and this is what we do as humans. He said, but listen, I wouldn't tell him. He tried, he was an employer, so he couldn't come out and say, are you doing drugs? Like he was trying to get me to say what was going on. I was too ashamed. I was racked with guilt. I couldn't believe what I was doing myself. And I never told him then why I was, not showing up to work. I wouldn't tell him. He's like, talk to me. We can, there were resources. He could have gotten me help, but I wouldn't say it. So he's like, well, I'm going to have to let you go. But he says, I'm going to say you got laid off so you can collect unemployment. Now, he was trying to be kind and nice, but boy, that was great for me. I was in the thick of heavy drug addiction with crack cocaine, so my money kept coming. It wasn't quite as much. So I wish I could say, losing that great job was the kicker that caused me to turn my life around, but it wasn't, because I kept an income. And I don't remember what I said to Stephanie, because at this time, me and Stephanie, our relationship is fractured. I don't think she was living there. I think she had gotten her own place at this point, and we're just trying to keep our relationship together. A lot had happened at that point. So I don't think we were living together. So I was able to keep it a secret. I didn't tell anyone. Most of the drug use I did myself. I don't even think I was doing it with my neighbor much. Oh, wait, I remember. Oh my gosh. So Cindy's living downtown. I think she was with Rob, a guy she had met, a longtime family friend, her boyfriend. And I don't even know how him and I got connected and started smoking crack together, but we did. And then there was another guy. Oh, what's his name? He lives in California now. He's a really good human. Him and I did a lot of drugs together, and we would go on Hilltop. You guys, it was crazy. It was, oh my gosh, crazy. So I lose my job, and I lose my apartment. Gosh, yeah, I lose my apartment because I wasn't paying rent. I remember my manager, she was super cool. She was trying to work with me, and she finally was like, you got to move. I hadn't paid rent. I know I wasn't paying utilities. I was always on a shut-off notice. My son, When he was there, I wasn't really present. That wasn't pretty. And yeah, I lost my apartment, and I move in with Jerry. I'm pretty sure I move in with Jerry Emerson because I needed a place to live. He was living in a tiny studio apartment. They're still there off of 6th and Cushman. It was a little complex, and my grandma lived in one, Jerry lived in one, and my Uncle Tom, Dad, he lived in one. They were all there together. And Grandma Turco is Jerry and Tom's mom. I'm almost certain that's where I moved. So I was sleeping on a couch at Jerry's place, and it was it was depressing. Yep. And me and Stephanie, it wasn't pretty. She was done. There was it was very dysfunctional. I think she had gotten her apartment downtown. And I'm pretty sure somewhere in here. Oh, wait. I got to back this up, you guys. No. I go to treatment. I'm pretty sure I went to, I'm got to keep this on track. My mom was living in Puyallup in an apartment with Ed. She was with Ed. And I went there. I'm pretty sure I went to my mom's because this is the first time, and because I open up, I think I tell Stephanie first, maybe. I don't remember. Cindy, I know I told Cindy because Cindy's mom worked for the state. And she's like, go talk to my mom. You can get into treatment. So the living situation, sorry for the confusion. From that apartment, I lose the apartment. I must have went to my mom's in Puyallup. And I remember the room I had. Yep, I did. Because I remember getting my unemployment check. I would wait on Thursdays. It would come on Thursdays. I'd go wait for the mailman. Yep, this is when it was. I lost my apartment, so I'm wanting to quit crack. And if you've ever done heavy drugs, it's you can have a strong desire, but man, it can be really tough. And so I think I told Cindy first. I think I did. And long story short, all of these are long stories, hard to tell short. This is the first time I go to treatment. I think I had ran through my unemployment probably, or I was getting close to. I was just like, after a while doing crack, it's not fun anymore. It's like a job. It's like getting it, smoking it, just like, ooh. And so I go to treatment first time, and 25-ish, 26, somewhere in there. Go to Olalla, and Olalla is still alive and well. It's a treatment center on the other side of the Narrows Bridge. And this is the first time in my life to this point that I start peeling the onion of the crazy of my childhood. And it was a lot. I remember I still have my little folder from treatment. I remember it as being a very positive experience. Stephanie and I were we were still together because she came out. I remember she came out to visit. I don't remember if Tyler came out, if his mom brought him out or not. I'm pretty sure Cindy came out to visit. Me and Cindy would maintain a relationship until she passed a couple years ago. And Cindy was always someone that believed in me, just like Stephanie did, and wanted better for me. So I remember, I went to treatment. I would call it a successful treatment. I got a lot of good information. I remember my group and my counselor. And I remember, I'm going to wrap this one up here in a few minutes. I remember in that treatment, this was the first time I had any exposure to any real counseling or talking about really raw stuff. And I remember the assessment I got and the counselor and in treatment, because mind you, I went to treatment because of crack cocaine, right? Like I need to stop that. It's not going well. And in treatment, it was when they said, you start looking at the history of your use. And it was in that treatment that they were like, well, yeah, you need to quit crack and you need to stop drinking and you need to stop smoking pot and you need to stop doing crank, right? The old school crank speed. I'm like, oh, wow. That seems a lot. But I bought into it to an extent, and I can read through my stuff, the journals I wrote and the things I wrote. Like, yeah, okay. And I was young, meaning I was 25, and I remember I was one of the youngest at that time in treatment. This was an adult treatment center, and everyone was, I remember they're like, oh, Douglas, David, you're going to do this and it's going to be great. And I remember that feeling of, yeah, it's going to be good. And I remember leaving treatment. And so I'm staying with my mom at her apartment in Puyallup, right by Fred Meyer downtown. And I'll never forget this. So, I'm kind of on fire this is my first exposure to a life in recovery, and I'll never forget getting out of treatment and coming home, and my mom was with Ed at the time. She was with this guy for about a decade altogether. And he drank, smoked pot, and just a lot of... For me, when I remember my mom actually drinking a lot, they would, drink a lot. My mom worked at a bar in downtown Puyallup. Ed, he would work here and there. I don't remember him ever working consistently. But I get out of treatment and I go home to my mom's with her husband, Ed, fresh out of treatment. Like the day I got out of treatment, I go in and he pulls out a pot pipe. And I remember, oh God, I'm like, oh my God, what's happening right now? He's like, do you want some? I'm like, no, I don't. I'm in recovery now. I don't know how I said it, but it was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be great. So, here we go. So I kind of had to get out of there. And my stepbrother / cousin Kenny, I connected with him. He had a house. He was living in a house up in northeast Tacoma. And he let me move in with him. And I'm almost positive it was because Kenny, I think he had quit smoking pot. I remember he used to a lot. But anyway, he actually owned his own business at the time. He was cleaning keg restaurants. I think he had like a dozen of them that he cleaned, and he had people work for him, alas. But I had to get out of my mom's house. There was no way I was going to stay sober. I remember going to meetings early in those days. And I move up to Kenny's, northeast Tacoma. Me and Stephanie are still kind of together, I think. Kinda. I vaguely remember that. I think this might be where we break up for good. It is, I know, in not too long if we didn't there. I remember Tyler coming over to that house a lot. I would have him over. I also remember it being a real struggle. My mental health was not good. I was working. Where was I working? So I was helping Kenny graveyards clean restaurants, and I was working I think I got my job at Brewery City Pizza because that's where Stephanie was working, and she got me on. Yes, it is. I started out as a driver. I ended up being a shift manager. So I was working a lot, spending some time with my son. Pretty sure navigating Stephanie and I, if I'm being real honest, and I think she would agree, just navigating the breakup, prolonging it, trying. Yeah, that's right. We're engaged, you guys. Oh, geez. We are engaged. So I said I was going to close this up, so I'm going to close it up with the breakup and my return to use. Sorry, but that's where we're going to go. So, living at Kenny's, I remember the house. It was a small house. Kenny worked, and then we didn't really hang out much. He would sleep during the day because he worked all graveyards. I think I was working a couple nights a week for him that paid for my rent. I was working at Brewery City Pizza. I remember my boss, Ross. He was a really good guy. He drank a lot at the time, but he was pretty functional. Yeah, I was sober. Yes, I was. I remember being sober because I remember like being a little envious because we had beer, and I remember we started selling wine, and we did the wine tasting, and I wasn't drinking. But it was tough. I remember having a desire to drink, but I was like, nope. And Ross was actually supportive of me not drinking. And Julio, so what happens? How do I return to drinking and doing drugs? Me and Stephanie it was on the rocks. It was really difficult. I just remember I actually have some journaling from this time period. Our relationship was not good. I remember the day I drank. So I think I stayed sober for 5 months, 6 months, maybe. The Seattle Supersonics were in the playoffs, and me and Julio went to a sports bar in Federal Way. And I remember that's when I returned to drinking. And I remember calling Stephanie, or I think she paged me. I had a pager. I was super cool. I had a pager. And I remember the phone call where because she paged, she was wondering where I was at. I said, well, I'm up at a sports bar. And as I remember it, she was probably mad I returned to drinking, but she was mad that I didn't do it with her. And so what I recall is she came to that bar and threw my engagement ring at me, and we were done. Yeah. I'm going to close this up with hope. Here you go. The hope is, because it gets real ugly, the next couple podcasts is where it gets really dark. Methamphetamine comes into the picture, and I go places and do things in my life I never, ever would have dreamed or had nightmares that would happen, but it happens. But the hope is next month I'll celebrate 18 years as a person in recovery. Previous to that, I had over a decade in recovery. I do return to use in 2006 for just less than 6 months. But I'm a person in long-term recovery, and I get to live an amazing life today. In fact, today I go down to an all-male inpatient treatment center, and I give a lecture on skills to navigate a life in early recovery. I get to do some amazing things in my life today. And it's only because I've had access to resources to get to a life in recovery, to enhance that life in recovery through counseling, through support, through family, through friends, through job opportunities, through education. So as you listen to these podcasts and as I'm telling the story of my life, I want you to keep hope at the front of your mind. Because as I'm going to say to the guys at the treatment center today, I'm nobody special. I'm just a kid from the streets of Tacoma who lived a crazy wild ride of a childhood, who lived a crazy wild ride of my adult years. And now I get to live a crazy, wild, amazing life as a person in recovery. I hope you enjoy your day. As always, thanks for listening. Episodes are released twice a week, Mondays and Fridays. You can also follow me on my other social media channels in the description.